Hi, I'm Professor Lori Kraft, and I have a question for everybody out there. Can't anyone smell these friggin' zombies? Well, I'm teaching the Chemistry of Forensics Colloquium course this fall, and in the final chapter, we're going to estimate the time of death. And to do this, we have to understand the process of death. And what better way to learn than to analyze The Walking Dead? In fact, I've always enjoyed a really good episode of Walking Dead, especially in the beginning of the series. Of course, there were very good-looking actors. Rick, for example. There were great adventures, exciting suspense, and a storyline with a love triangle, and eventually a love child. So lots of adventures with Rick's friends. But through all of this, the world must have smelled terrible. And yet nobody acknowledges this. I mean, dead humans release 30 chemical compounds, and they don't have nice names. Like, one is called cadaverine and putrescine. So the zombie apocalypse probably had quite the stench, and yet they don't really talk about it. Now, as I move forward in this talk, I do have this warning slide for our sensitive viewers. You'll see this friendly warning sign when something gross, foul, disgusting, or just plain wrong is coming up. So in that situation, if you are one of my sensitive viewers, you may want to cover your eyes, leave the room, maybe go for a walk, do something else, because something gross is about to happen. Now, there's only one episode in The Walking Dead where I can recall the actors acknowledging the stench. It was season 1, episode 2, in an effort to cover up their own smell, and this is the actors' smell in the zombie apocalypse. And by the way, I have to presume it was pretty bad since they were constantly running from zombies, and I don't really remember them taking showers, using soap, or anything like that. So to cover up their smell, the actors butchered a zombie. And wouldn't you know it, out of this dead thing comes blood and guts. Yeah, there's some problems with this kind of approach to zombies. I mean, isn't the premise that they're mindless walking shells, like absent blood and guts? And then I have to wonder, don't you have to think to chew? I mean, that's a pretty complex process. And I often wonder, well, why do zombies still have eyes? I mean, eyes are just a bunch of liquid, and really they should be one of the first things to go when you become a zombie. And then I wonder, where are the maggots? Shouldn't these zombies have like insects just all over them? And then you start to wonder, well, does this mean zombies can eat? And if they eat, they must poop. So was the zombie apocalypse like covered in zombie poop? Because that would not smell very nice either. So to help answer these questions, I chose an interview with an expert. And this is Kimberly Moran. She's a forensic archaeologist and assistant program director of Arcadia University's Forensic Science Master's Program. So some pretty good credentials there. And we wonder, well, what should the zombies look like in The Walking Dead if they're supposed to truly reflect a dead walking thing? Well, first of all, zombies should have no eyes, especially after 9 months, complete disintegration of the eyes. They're just like liquid-filled sacks. I mean, they should be gone. Within 24 hours of dying, the decomposition begins. And it should start with discolored abdomen. The entire body should be decaying in like 3 days. And so the fact that they have blood and guts in them, probably not very realistic. And zombies shouldn't be able to move for a few days. Rigor mortis is something we're going to learn about, and that should set in about 3 to 6 hours after death. And that's where all the muscles go rigid. So zombies really can't move at all immediately after death. They should actually wait a few days. And then zombies should really be a meat sack full of liquid, if you think about it. Like, all the squishy stuff should be liquefying. The internal organs should be turning to mush. The skin should slide off as it detaches. So yeah, it's kind of like a meat sack of liquid. And then at the same time, imagine this. So bacteria is producing gas, and the body bloats until the gas and the liquid leak from all orifices. So really, zombies should be slimy. And I don't remember any slimy zombies in the Walking Dead zombie apocalypse. In addition, zombies should have body parts falling off all the time until they're like nothing but a skeleton. Now, of course, the ligaments and tendons would take a little longer, and it might take a few years before it's completely skeletonized. But you have to remember, they're in Georgia. And in Georgia, it's hot enough that that body should fully decompose in less than a year. So, yeah, it should be just a disgusting mess. Now, zombies should be completely covered in maggots. Within 24 hours of death, every fly within 5 miles should know there's a free meal walking around. And so, of course, when flies lay their eggs, they hatch and become magnets. And getting back to that sack of blood, get this. So zombies are missing skin, they're missing tissue, they're missing organs, their bones are sticking out, but they don't smell until you cut them open. Because remember, the actors cut the zombies open, the blood and guts fell out, and then they took those blood and guts and they smeared them all over themselves to try to cover their own smell. And I guess it was pretty effective because they could walk among the zombies, and the zombies didn't seem to care. Now, what's interesting, though, that those blood and guts, they really shouldn't be there. Because if you have a zombie that's being held together with, like, bones, maybe what's left of some tendons and ligaments, you would have a huge pool of blood and guts, but that should be all over the floor. That shouldn't be inside the zombie. So I don't really know what's holding those blood and guts in there, but there it is. You cut open the zombie and you get blood and you get guts. The actors didn't like the smell of the stuff. Zombies didn't mind the smell of the stuff. But yeah, again, not too realistic. Now let me share a quote with you from a funeral director with regards to decay. And you would think a funeral director would have some knowledge here. So again, let me post my warning sign for all our sensitive viewers. Now keep in mind, this video was posted in 2019, so it is a very recent video. And this is going to be a quote from John Slocum, Executive Director of Funeral Consumers Alliance. The casket becomes a literal pressure cooker. It reduces the body to a disgusting, chunky, brown slurry. So if you watch the YouTube sensation called What Really Happens to Your Body After 1 Year in a Coffin, you're going to see the graphic shown here. Yeah. And of course you see this slurry, the quote, when that pressure reaches that coffin's tipping point, you have corpse juice spilling out all over the place. Ooh. So you may want to share this video with someone you don't like. Not only is this unsightly, but the smell just has to be horrendous. And again, nobody really acknowledged this juice in The Walking Dead. And believe me, I had to binge watch. I had to sacrifice a few times just to be sure. I had to watch those episodes of The Walking Dead. But the zombies only smell when you release the fresh blood and guts that are magically held inside their body cavity with some kind of invisible tissue. Because other than that, the actors really didn't acknowledge that there was any smell to those zombies. Go figure. Now, in my colloquium course, we're going to continue by calculating the time of death using different techniques. Now, the easiest one is to just use the temperature change. And we assume you're going to start with a normal body temperature, and the body has had time to cool. So you measure the new temperature, and it involves a little math. It involves a few assumptions about the cooling rate. You take the temperature, and you can estimate what the time of death is. Now, it's a little more complicated if that body is at ambient temperature. That means the temperature of the surroundings. We're going to learn about different stages of death, and they all have mortis in them. And mortis means of death. No surprise there. We're going to talk about pallor mortis. You turn pale after death. Algor mortis. Your body cools down. Livor mortis. The blood is going to settle. And the cool phase that everyone remembers, rigor mortis. And that is where the body stiffens. And of course, that's why these zombies shouldn't be able to walk or move at all. Now again, a brief warning for my sensitive viewers out there. But here is putrefaction. It occurs after the mortises. And this is where noxious odors are released from the body, and it undergoes a black discoloration. Oh yeah. Now, we might be able to get a window for the time of death based on the stage that the body is found in. But to really hone in on that time of death, we have to analyze the bugs and the maggots. So, in many chapters in this course, students are going to complete hands-on activities to reinforce the concepts of forensics. Well, in this one, lucky you, you'll get to identify the types of maggots and flies on the body, measure the maggots, determine the life stage, and use life cycle charts to determine the time of death. So where do those maggots come from? And again, a brief warning. Ooh, maggots in the eye sockets. Oh boy. Wouldn't you know it? Maggots like to hide in body orifices. Oh, think about that. But not too long. They help themselves to breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And if we pull maggots from the eye sockets, you want to make sure to include the shortest and the longest to get a really good idea of the time of death. And we're going to look at the maggot life cycle, and then we'll get a good estimate for that time. Now you might be wondering, am I going to make you use actual maggots from an actual dead body? Well, I think we would need much better equipment and a lab that was far from campus to contain the smell. So in my class, we're going to use fake maggots, and by fake maggots, I mean pipe cleaners made by me. But we're also going to complete a virtual evaluation of maggots found in a real dead body, and we'll go through the process to find the time of death. So it's going to be cool either way. It's just you don't have to handle real maggots. Now, if you're a little disappointed because you aren't going to be handling real maggots, you could take a vacation to a place called the Body Farm. we're going to talk about the Body Farm. And at the Body Farm, lots of real insects and real maggots to look at. So again, brief warning and picture of the Body Farm. Now, here's what I figure with the Body Farm and the zombie apocalypse. So any humans that are living close to a body farm will become the first victims in the zombie apocalypse. And there's body farms at the University of Tennessee, Texas State University, Western Carolina University, and Southern Illinois University. So don't live anywhere near any of these universities, because the body farm is exactly what it sounds like. There's decaying bodies all over the place. Some are buried at various depths. Some are just like laying on the ground. I figure these bodies that are laying on the ground, they'll have the definite advantage in the zombie apocalypse. I mean, they don't have to unbury themselves. They can just get up. They can be the first zombies to attack the humans. So again, you really don't want to be close to any of these body farms. So what's the goal? Why have all these dead and decaying bodies? Well, they're trying to develop standards of decomposition. So you could take your body, the dead body you found, and bring it to the body farm, compare it to other bodies in various stages of decomposition, and determine if your body's been decaying for a few days, maybe a few weeks, or months and months. Kind of interesting, right? So what else do we do in the chemistry of forensics? Well, one of the big ideas in this course is forensics is not foolproof. I don't care what you see on TV, okay? You can watch any of those crime and whatever shows. No, Walking Dead is not a perfect example. It's not very accurate, not very reflective of what would really happen in the zombie apocalypse. And you know what? Solving cases is not a perfect idea. We're going to talk about mistakes. The techniques are not 100%. There might be some good odds with some of the techniques, but they're never perfect. I don't care what you see on CSI. Sometimes it's inconclusive. You don't have enough evidence. In fact, some of you might have heard of the Innocence Project. To date, 367 people in the United States have been exonerated using DNA testing, and 21 of them served time on death row. These people served an average of 14 years in prison before exoneration and release. So think about that. That's way too many people to be put into prison wrongly. So my hope is that every student in the class will realize that forensics is not a perfect science, even though it may appear to be on TV. You may or may not find the guilty guy. The evidence may be conclusive, it may not be conclusive. But it is a shame that we're releasing all these people who were innocent and wrongly accused. And we're also going to do a lot of fun activities in addition to the time of death. So I do have some of the activities listed here, so you can get excited about participating in the class. We're going to solve a crime virtually using the mass of some basic chemical compounds. Now, please don't panic if you haven't had chemistry in a while, or maybe you've never taken chemistry. Because what we're going to do is we're going to have chemistry people work with non-chemistry people and solve a crime. And if you don't have friends that have any kind of chemistry background whatsoever, again, don't worry, because I'll be there to help you solve the crime. We're going to determine the location of a gunshot. Now, this is really cool. And again, please do not panic. It is a combination of a little physics, a little math, a little chemistry, some geometry, and we're going to figure out where that shooter was standing. Now, again, if you're not an expert in these areas, that's okay. because I will be there to help you out. We're going to build a lie detector, and it's going to use some very basic chemical principles. It's really based on the conductivity of the sweat in your hand. But again, don't worry, very simple procedure. We're going to optimize your basic electrical engineering skills, and we'll make a little lie detector. And then we can ask each other really embarrassing questions. We're going to extract DNA. We're going to use something called PCR to create additional strands. But again, this has to be a virtual lab. If we had the money, this would be great to do for real. But very expensive equipment and a little easier to do virtually. We're going to use super glue, and it's a very simple compound called cyanoacrylate. It reacts with fatty acids to develop latent fingerprints, and these are fingerprints that you don't see. But after you expose them to the fumes, they come out and develop very nicely. We're going to determine blood alcohol content, and we'll test and type blood in a virtual lab. Once again, if we had endless money, this would be so fun to run these in the lab. But since we don't, we'll run them virtually. And again, it's a great learning tool because you'll be actually doing the steps that they would do in real life. And then we're also going to do a virtual autopsy. Now, if you don't like blood and you don't like guts, you can just skip the whole autopsy. But it's very, very basic. There's diagrams and stuff like that. And then if you want, you can take it a step further. And I have a real autopsy shown on a video. But again, that would be optional. So I'm going to end my talk here. I hope to see you in Chemistry of Forensics this fall. Thank you.